fortunately, that we got her for this film festival, she was able to, in turn, get us Charles Sturridge for this film festival because they just finished working together on a new HBO series that's just starting called
The Number One Ladies Detective Agency. Which starts tomorrow in America and is on now in England.
Try to formulate some questions, because the most important part of this are questions from you. Here you have somebody who's in the business and very successful, and he's got some interesting stories. So if something clicks in your head from watching these clips, remember that question and we'll just ask it.
Any form of art, but filmmaking more than any other, that the key is to awaken an audience by what you say, the way you say it, the way you build ideas in the head of your audience, where in film you have a kind of amazing vocabulary of elements that you can use, and some of the elements we can talk about today, but the obvious one being visual, but also oral with music, verbal with words, performance, and then onto that you can add sort of layers of other possibilities. Special effects, digital animation, so many things you can pull together, all of which are completely worthless if they're not backed by ideas, because ideas are the only thing that's really interesting to connect with. And the great thing about film is the limitless possibility you have for using ideas, and really nothing else is important. I mean, actually, even performance, even picture, even music, all those elements bow down before the quality of ideas underneath them. But the first time I remember, not directing as such, but kind of really feeling I was directing was when I was 16, and I did my first play on my own at school, which was a short play called Edward Albee's The Zoo Story, and there's a moment at the end of the play which is about two people who meet on a park bench and have a dialogue, at the end of which one of them gets killed, and you don't really understand that this is going to happen right until the last 3 or 4 minutes of the play. And I remember standing, it was a room very, very like this, oddly enough. It was the school kind of, school theatre. It looked almost exactly like this, in fact, without quite the smart ceiling. And I was standing outside the door there because there's a moment, the moment that separates directors and actors, basically, is that you get to the end of rehearsal in the theatre as opposed to film. At the end of rehearsal, and then suddenly you look at each other and the actors think, I've got to go on and do all that stuff you've been talking about, and all you're going to be doing is standing outside the door just with your fingers crossed, and that's where I was, standing outside the door with my fingers crossed. And I remember in the second before the killing takes place, the audience laughed 3 times. They didn't know where the scene was going. There were these 3 big laughs, and then it's a stabbing, the knife went in, and the silence, the switch, if you like, and the shock of moving from something that they saw as a safe situation to something they saw as a dangerous situation was so powerful. You could see, I mean, because no one knew the play, the jolt it gave them, and the thrill, if you like, at creating that juxtaposition of emotions, which I remember so well and have sought in different ways to create those moments when an audience suddenly understands something, in that instance, how badly they misjudged that situation. But there are all sorts of other ways of affecting an audience. And the thrill of making that happen and constructing a series of events that makes that happen, which you can feel as an actor as well. So it's in a way, it's the thrill of storytelling. It's not just a director's feeling, but I felt it as a director, and it was one of the things that made, at that point I didn't ever think I would be a director, I suppose, but just sort of made you think this is worth doing.
But you will take, and you do a number of true stories that have happened, and then you adapt them for the screen. And how much responsibility, well, how does it work, in other words, but how much responsibility do you have to the original material to keep it true to it?
What interests me is the truth. So that I feel a lot of responsibility towards the truth, and I don't like basically telling an untruth when I'm telling a true story. But that's partly because the truth is always more extraordinary than anything you can invent. Not anything you can invent, but finally invention, this is is a really dangerous thing to say, but narrative invention can easily become predictable or moral or cliched or all sorts of different things, whereas real life is full of astonishingly surprising, sometimes contradictory, but always revelatory events.